I made this. It is not at all uncommon for my brother to randomly show up asking me to help him with something, and this time, he needed me to make him an epoxy countertop for his van, but I was going out of town in less than a week, so we would essentially have 5 days to get the whole thing done. So far, I have a pretty good track record. I've never flat out told him no or completely failed him, but I gotta be honest, this time came pretty close to doing both. So this is what happened. Like most of my projects, it started out with painter's tape. I'm a firm believer that painter's tape can solve like 70% of the world's problems, so that's what I used to make an outline for this counter. Then I sort of puzzle pieced together these olive wood roots until I was happy with the design. And while my brother was busy slicing up all the little pieces of pizza that didn't quite fit, I had the very important job of making a mold that wouldn't leak plastic juice all over my studio floor. And then I poured a thin layer of tabletop epoxy as a sort of base to glue down all the wood. And this part was important because I didn't want any of these little islands floating up to the surface and changing all the spacing that I worked so hard on when I got ready to flood the whole thing with deep pour epoxy. Since we didn't have a lot of time to work with, I decided to use the MAS Epoxies Deep Pour kit because you can pour up to 1 inch in thickness at a time without setting your entire house on fire. So I was able to fill up this whole thing in one giant pour instead of like 12 mini pours, and that saved us a ton of steps and time. It also saved me from having to color match multiple batches because it's never going to be exactly perfect even if you know what you're doing, which I rarely do. The epoxy does a really good job of degassing itself as it cures, but I still like to use my Big Bertha butane torch to pop all the surface bubbles right after pouring because it makes me feel like I'm living life on the wild side. The stuff takes about 36 hours to cure, so we came back to demold it once it was ready to rock out like a cool kid.
Getting this, right?
Right. You don't have to be a heathen about it.
It's stuck on there. I'm gonna have to make you some new things to this.
I know. This is where I get to be Harley Quinn. This is one of my favorite parts of doing these kinds of projects because it's just senselessly violent like an episode of Game of Thrones, and it's a great way for me to get out some of my pent-up aggression without having to talk to my therapist. And yes, this always makes me feel like Harley Quinn because her weapon of choice from the old school Batman the Animated Series was a comically huge mallet. Drop a bat emoji in the comments if you remember that so I know you're an OG. What does it look like?
You'd be surprised. It came out clean on the bottom.
I get a lot of questions about where I got my router sled from, and I just want to take a moment to say that I am genuinely flattered that you think this piece of garbage was actually made by some kind of professional manufacturer. It's literally a couple of Johnny 2x4s and some aluminum angle bars from Lowe's. The whole thing cost like $15 and took 20 minutes to set up. We spent the next several hours taking turns trying to get this thing perfectly flat with a 3/4 inch wide flattening bit. 3/4 of an inch. I don't think you understand how many passes it took to accomplish this, and honestly, neither do I, but I can tell you it took a lot. It took a lot of passes, a lot of upper body strength, and a lot of my will to live. The cleanup process after this is also ridiculous. It throws all these wood chips and plastic shards that, honest to God, look like toenails all over the entire room. I'm serious. It makes it look like my room was selected as the venue for a toenail clipping convention. And my childish ass likes to save some in a jar to use for future pranks, but in all seriousness, it takes like 3 hours to get everything cleaned back up, and I hate every minute of it. And tabletop epoxy is really forgiving, but not that forgiving, so we ended up sanding this up to 120 grit before calling it quits because it was like 11 o'clock at night and we were starving and exhausted and undoubtedly annoying the hell out of my neighbors. And this is why I need a house, so I can do dumb stuff until midnight without bothering anybody.
Wait, he comes in like that. Even though they cut away from him, he was still doing it when he came in. Hold on, look. So he's running up the steps all... he's like glitching.
He's right? Glitching.
Then he gets in there, and then you think that's it. But while they're showing them, he's still running.
Truth be told, this is probably the most exciting part of the process for me because it's like the last major step and then it's done. And it's also the most high stakes step because any little microscopic speck of dust or stray dog hair can completely ruin everything and cause you to spiral into an existential crisis while eating an entire block of cheese directly out of your refrigerator. You can make little mistakes here and there throughout the earlier stages of the project, but if you mess up the final top coat, your whole project is screwed. And no matter how cool a project is, I'm usually sick of looking at it by this phase and start itching to start working on something new, so knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel usually gives me that second win that I need to just finish it out. And speaking about being bored and how it can lead to making a whole host of questionable decisions, this is when I ditched my brother to go get on a plane and hang out with a bunch of sketchy people I met on the internet. Clearly my mom did not do enough to teach me about stranger danger because I didn't know none of these people.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard. Once you have located your seat, we ask you that you please step out of the aisle.
gosh, this is really heavy. I was not expecting it. Oh, that's good. Make sure you get my butt if I do sweatpants. Oh, it is. Go, Callie. Go, Callie. It's gonna be silent, so we can just be goofy. So cute, though. I love it. I love you guys. Come check this out. Okay, so we didn't technically get the whole project done in 5 days. We did end up doing all the finishing touches and install after I got back, but I'm still super proud of myself for getting this huge project done in such a short amount of time. It kind of felt like a full circle moment because one of the first ever projects that I did when I first started working with epoxy was a countertop for one of my brother's vans, and this is leaps and bounds better than that early earnest attempt of mine. Just kind of cool that I can now actually make the things that I used to aspire to someday being able to make. Someday I want my brother to help me design my own camper van so me and Axel can go on adventures outside and still have all of our creature comforts, which would be nice because we're both really bougie. But for now, I am happy just making him countertops and helping him with the random parts of his projects that he likes to call liquid bullshit. You know how it goes by now. If you liked this video, go ahead and like this video. And if you didn't like this video, why have you watched it for this long? That's like a really weird use of your time. Anyway, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Alright, start recording. I want to bust out like the Kool-Aid man. Oh wait, I'm stuck.